Good evening. My name is Tim Flynn, and I'm the mayor of the city of Oxnard. This evening, I'm providing the 14th update to the community since the COVID-19 crisis started. I want to thank each and every one of you for sharing this broadcast with your friends. So if you could do that now, it helps get the information out. So I have a large program here this evening. Let's hope I can get through all the topics within at least 30 minutes. The very first topic I'd like to talk about here this evening is the problem of homelessness or the homeless in the city of Oxnard, and a proposal for a shelter that would be probably just about 5 blocks here from where I live. And I want to start out by saying that the homeless issue, since I've been on the city council, has been one of the most perplexing and challenging issues that I have faced as a public official. It involves so many different things, and I think most importantly, you as members of the public have seen in the last couple of years that the homeless problem has only become worse here in the city of Oxnard. So I want to first start out by giving you a little bit of an overview and then go into a proposal that is before the city council this coming Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. So the first thing is that Ventura County, which has a population of approximately 850,000 people, has about 1,600 people that are homeless. Of those 1,600, 2/3 of them reside in Oxnard and in Ventura. And I want to dispel the myth that because Oxnard and Ventura actually have shelters, that's the reason why a disproportionate number of the homeless in Ventura County are here. They're here because the weather, whether in the summertime or in the wintertime, is more conducive to living outside. So there are 1,600 homeless, 2/3 reside in the city of Oxnard and in Ventura. And here in the city of Oxnard, we have approximately, and that fluctuates, about 700 homeless in the city. Of those 700 homeless right now, we're housing approximately between 100 and 110 individuals at the Armory on South K Street. And in fact, since COVID-19 started, half of them were sent over to what used to be Bannister Gym of Oxnard High School. So about 55 were sent there to the gym, and the gym was set up to allow for social distancing. And then the Armory was set up for the other 55. This is a temporary shelter. It cannot be a long-term shelter because it is in the airport flight pattern of Ventura County Airport. And in fact, all of those buildings, eventually the Oxnard Union High School District buildings and everything that is in that flight pattern at some point are likely to go away. Right now, the Oxnard Union High School District is preparing to move their operations away from this location, and they'll have a joint office with a real school district, I believe in the next 9 months, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong with that. So the temporary shelter, it's a 24-hour-a-day emergency shelter. It used to be that the homeless, it would only be a winter shelter. It would be there for 3 months during the worst part of the winter. And so it would provide, again, shelter to up to 100 people for those 3 months. But those individuals would have to be there within a certain time, and then at 6 in the morning, they would be released. And then they would, go out into the community, and then they would return again before a set time. Maybe that was 6 p.m. So this shelter now is a 24-hour shelter. So the individuals that are residing there are staying there 24 hours a day. So knowing that this shelter is a temporary shelter, we in the city of Oxnard have been looking for a more permanent shelter. And I, as mayor, or your mayor of the city of Oxnard, was involved several years ago with a previous housing director by the name of Arturo Casillas. We were involved in, and I helped start a search committee for that homeless shelter site. And we visited over a 1 year, maybe year and a half period between 15 and 20 sites all throughout the city of Oxnard. But my number one criteria was not only do we have to have the space to be able to house the homeless, and hopefully more than 100, but that shelter should be located in a more remote place, because the number one challenge to establishing a homeless shelter is the effect that it potentially might have on either residences or on businesses. And so I had the group more or less focused on Vineyard Avenue, both within the city limits and just outside the city limits off of Vineyard. But that effort at looking for a site, even though we visited 15 or 20 different locations, did not produce a place that was going to be adequate for this purpose. So eventually we got a new city manager, Alex Nguyen, a new housing director, and whose name is Emilio Ramirez. And Mr. Ramirez and Mr. Nguyen then began their work, and the housing department began their work looking for an alternative site. The housing department visited and or looked at 21 different sites throughout the city of Oxnard, and they came up with a site at 5 Points. Some of you might remember this. And it was a former furniture store. This effort did not work out. 5 Points happens to be one of the busiest intersections in the city. There was very strong opposition to it in the neighborhood, and there were some other complications. And so the city once again was sent looking to find an alternative site. Today there is a proposal to place a site on city-owned property, and that is in the former code enforcement building. Before that it used to be the Southern California Gas building. And that site has been selected as the new homeless shelter site. So let me just go over that a little bit. So number one, it's not only going to be a homeless shelter, so that would be in the bottom floor, that would house approximately 110 people. It would have up to 56 more permanent units above that shelter, and then it also would have offices for treatment for individuals with mental health issues, social issues, etc. So social workers, mental health workers, etc. So this site is just across from the library in downtown Oxnard, and the actual footprint of the former gas building and code enforcement building, I believe, is about 12,000 or 13,000 square feet. So right now the city council the staff has selected a site that's being recommended to the city council. That'll come to the city council this coming Tuesday. So if you're interested, you should get on the meeting channel on the oxnard.org website, go up to government, go down to meetings or all meetings, and scroll down to next Tuesday's city council meeting. And then you can also get your request in to the city clerk before 3 p.m. on Tuesday if you'd like to speak on that item or any other item. So the decision before the city council this next Tuesday is, do we enter into an agreement with a developer to develop this site for the purposes of a homeless shelter and of permanent housing and of providing the services that many of the homeless need. The agreement is proposed to last for 1 year, where we negotiate with the developer, and then there's a 1-year extension if the agreement isn't reached within 1 year. And again, the purpose and what the council's facing on Tuesday is only to decide, do we allow the staff to negotiate with the developer to try to construct this site? Now, the positive news about this is that the funding for this, a lot of you are probably thinking, where's the money going to come from, Mayor? I mean, you've been talking about how the city is having budget problems. The Community Development Partners, which is connected to Mercy House. Mercy House is a nonprofit organization that's running our shelter here in Oxnard, here at the Armory, and at the Bannister Gym, and they're also running Ventura Shelter. This nonprofit organization and Community Development Partners that has a development wing is going to then negotiate with the staff to see if we can find a commonality to establish this homeless shelter here. And most importantly, one of the main tasks that they have is to go out and get federal and state matching dollars, or I should just say outright grants, to establish this shelter. And then I think out of a $32 million project, yes, $32 million, there is a $9 million loan by that organization to fund that. The only expenses that the city will incur are exactly what the city's incurring right now, $2.5 million a year. It is figured for police. In essence, we have 700 homeless, we're housing 100, and those other 600 homeless are basically just being resettled by the police department. We have 2 homeless liaison officers headed up by Stephen Ramirez. And in essence, the homeless are just being pushed from one location to another. So we're spending $2.5 million right now on our temporary shelter, emergency shelter, and all the costs associated with dealing with the homeless, trash pickups, disinfecting areas. It goes on and on and on. And by the way, I know a lot of you are submitting comments, so I'll take those questions after I finish with the presentation. So the agreement on Tuesday is has not yet been signed. The City Council will have a proposal from the staff. You can read that too about the proposal on the city's website, oxnard.org, and then go up to government, you go down to council meetings and go all the way to the right, and you can download the agenda packet and see the agenda item, and then scroll all the way down to the very end of the packet, and you can see the staff report on this proposed shelter. So, ladies and gentlemen, as mayor of the city of Oxnard, I could not, in all good conscience, approve a shelter anywhere if it's going to have an adverse impact on people in neighborhoods or on neighboring businesses. And that's in fact what some have said who are in this downtown corridor behind City Hall, so it's not in the main area of downtown, but a part of the downtown. They've said this will adversely impact this area. I'm going to be proposing Tuesday night to the City Council a homeless-free zone. What is a homeless-free zone? Because it sounds like doublespeak, doesn't it? Orwellian doublespeak, that we're going to have a homeless shelter there, but I'm proposing a homeless-free zone. And what that in essence is the following. We will determine a square block area in and around the shelter. Individuals that reside at this shelter are not going to be allowed to walk into the shelter. We're talking about the emergency shelter downstairs. They're not going to be allowed to approach that shelter, and that's exactly, and enter the shelter. That's exactly what we're doing here at the Armory. They have to go to various pickup points so that one area is not overly impacted. So the homeless-free zone will assure that individuals that are going to the bathroom in bushes, and I'm being polite with my language, there's drug use, there's harassment, and especially women who feel threatened and have felt threatened, that these issues must be absent from a square block area in and around the shelter, because either this is going to improve the area. What's going on with the area right now is these two homeless liaison officers are going there, chasing the people out that are in the former Rabobank building and neighboring areas. They're chasing them out of those areas, but we have individuals, again, going to the bathroom in bushes. There are no bathrooms, there's no restrooms available outdoors there. There's drug use, there's alcohol use, there are off and on, there are threats, there's intimidation, and it has an adverse impact on this area. So in order for me to support this, I'm going to try to get the City Council to approve a homeless-free zone. And so that is the first condition. And the second condition is on this is that we have a homeless commission. And that homeless commission has done a lot of good work at trying to locate sites and be part of the solution to this problem. Now, there are some members of the homeless commission that don't like this site, that don't like this particular choice. And it's understandable. I've spoken with the chair, Peggy Rivera, chairwoman, and I've spoken with her extensively about this. But the Homeless Commission has not been able to form a consensus on where, in fact, the site should be. And the most important thing is having a citizens advisory group. And remember, it's an advisory group. We need to make sure that if they're going to go in and do work and they bring a proposal that is, the City Council has to make a decision on, if they bring a proposal to their full commission, they vote on it, and by a majority, they agree on giving a recommended advice to the City Council, that must come to the City Council before the City Council makes an objective or makes a decision on something like a homeless shelter. So I'm looking forward to working with Peggy Rivera and the homeless commissioners to forge a consensus. Most importantly, the word is consensus. And by forming that consensus and me getting behind it, I'm hoping then we could take that to the staff and the City Council, and the Homeless Commission, I think, would feel that their work is more validated. So I think it's a very important issue. I have been speaking with the city manager about this. So once again, a homeless-free zone in and around the homeless shelter, that's going to be my requirement for me to approve this location. And secondly, that the Homeless Commission and the commissioners, that they feel that their hard work is actually being channeled properly to the City Council and the staff, and that they're having an impact on public policy. So that is the update on the downtown homeless shelter. Stay tuned. City Council will be making and deliberating on this development agreement next Tuesday, so tune in. So the very next item I'd like to bring to your attention here this evening is an update on fireworks. And I'm sorry, I have to take a little sip here of this mineral water. So fireworks. So I have never, in the time that I have served, seen more engagement by you, members of the public, about this issue of fireworks. You know, this last week, for whatever set of reasons, and I'm going to knock on wood, it has been a lot better. I can only credit the Oxnard Police Department and the good work that they've done. I can only credit those neighborhood watches and those individuals like Doug Partello. Last week I mispronounced and misspelled his name. It's Doug Partello of the Cabrillo neighborhood. I can only credit Doug and people in neighborhoods working hand in hand with the police department on why we've seen a reduction in this past week. Again, we're entering into the weekend, and the closer we get to the 4th of July, the more challenging it's becoming. If you'd like to send an email to Doug Partello, let me tell you what Doug's been doing. He's been working with someone by the name of Cecile Faulkner, and I guess she is a teacher, and also Taylor Qatar, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. They've been distributing brochures to businesses along C Street, Oxnard Boulevard, Saviors Road. I know Doug said yesterday they got out 50 brochures. They're going out and they're getting businesses to put these brochures in their windows, talking about what the fines are for fireworks. In other words, an attempt to further educate the public on the fact that fireworks are illegal here in the city of Oxnard. If you would like to get a hold of Doug, he's established a website, and you can, not a website, I apologize, an email. You can email Doug at OX, firework, so not fireworks, plural, but OX, firework, TF for task force at gmail.com. Send Doug an email and let him know that you'd like to get a neighborhood watch started in your neighborhood. I also this week was able to present to the chair of the Inter-Neighborhood Council, Jack Villa, and his organization that oversees the executive council of all the neighborhood councils. There are 47 of them in the city. I was also able to give them a presentation this week on reactivating and encouraging the heads of neighborhoods to reactivate their neighborhood watch programs. Let me end very quickly about this neighborhood watch program. Ladies and gentlemen, a neighborhood watch isn't about individuals getting into their cars, taking the law into their own hands, confronting people that are shooting fireworks, walking into the line of fire of somebody shooting off a firework. The purpose of a neighborhood watch is to be the eyes and ears of the police department. And this goes beyond fireworks. How about graffiti? How about somebody that looks like they're casing a vehicle, they're looking into a vehicle, or you actually see somebody break a window on a vehicle, whatever that might be. You are the eyes and ears of the police. You're not out there to do the job of police. You know, we can't replace police, ladies and gentlemen, despite what some people have said. We cannot replace them. They are there to do the policing. We're there to assist them. So if you are, like myself, very concerned about quality of life in your neighborhood, you need to get involved in your neighborhood council. You need to take charge. You need to take charge of your block. You need to take charge of the neighborhood. You need to become involved. The thought that strength in numbers can have an impact on a community is very powerful. And you have that power. So join Doug Partello, join your neighborhood council, send your chair an email. And remember, you can reach your chair of your neighborhood council by going to oxnard.org/neighborhoods. And there will be an interactive map. You're going to be able to click on where your neighborhood is. There are numbers 1 through 47. You'll click on that number where your neighborhood is, where you know that you live, and the name of your neighborhood chair will appear, and then you can send that neighborhood chair an email. So please get involved with fireworks. It's going to be ever more important. And once again, we want to reach out to the Oxnard Police Department, thank them for the job that they're doing and the limited resources that they have because of our budget constraints to go out and do all the other jobs that they have to do and enforce this fireworks ordinance at the same time. So please become a part of the solution to the problem and act in your neighborhood. I strongly encourage that. And I'd like to just transition from that to the town hall meeting. I mentioned this last week that next week on Wednesday, July 1st, Oxnard is having a town hall meeting. Now, the address is too complicated. to register on Zoom. But I think the first 100 people that register on Zoom will be able to partake in that conference. And you can find that on actually Facebook. I'm on Chief Scott Whitney's Facebook site right now. So if you go to Chief Whitney's Facebook site, you're going to see a brochure that is Oxnard Moving Forward. This is going to be a virtual panel discussion on racism and policing. 6 to 8 p.m., Wednesday, July 1st. The moderator is going to be the city manager, Alex Nguyen, and the panelists are going to be Police Chief Scott Whitney, former president of the Youth Directors Council at the Oxnard Police Activities League, Mate Alonso, attorney Cynthia Gonzalez, Oxnard Cultural and Community Services Director Terrell Harrison, NAACP Chapter President Regina Hatchard Crawford, Ventura County Public Defender Damon Jenkins, retired Police Commander Randy Latimer, and finally Community Advocate Peter Martinez. So they're going to have a panel discussion. We're looking forward to extending that conversation. I've called on you, members of this community, and I know other council members have, to start this conversation, and we want to make sure it's purposeful. We want to make sure that it leads to something right here in our community. But you'll be surprised, ladies and gentlemen, when you hear Chief Whitney and you hear those in the Oxnard Police Department, what changes have actually been made when it comes to the policies and procedures of the Oxnard Police Department. And again, under Chief Whitney's leadership, it's been about interacting with the community. And beneath him, the assistant chiefs, Jason Benitez and Eric Zonstagard. It's about interacting with the public. And then the commanders and the sergeants and all the way down in the rank and file. It's about being problem solvers and interacting with the public. And the police department under Chief Whitney has made tremendous progress. And again, we can't forget the contributions of some of Chief Whitney's predecessors. So I hope you're part of this Oxnard Town Hall meeting. We're looking forward to your participation, and we're looking forward to extending that conversation. All right, so the next thing here that I'd like to talk about is an update on COVID-19. So in the city of Oxnard, there are 708 cases of COVID-19, positive cases, out of the 2,336 in the county of Ventura. There are now 44 deaths, and Oxnard's percentage of these positive cases remains at 30% of the county total. Remember, for the longest time, Oxnard was around 23% of the county total. We have 25% of the population of the county of Ventura. Now it's gone to 30%. What is particularly concerning, and it's been a concern of mine, and I know it's a concern of public health officials and the leaders of this community, Oxnard is a very densely populated city. And I saw one report 10 years ago that said that the city of Oxnard has the 8th largest household count, not in the county of Ventura, not in the state of California, but in the United States of America. The 8th largest household count of people. And this is not uncommon, ladies and gentlemen, particularly in areas where there is a migrant community and there's farming, that you have a large amount of people in a very, very cramped area. God forbid, again, we're at 30%, but God forbid either farm workers or others that live in these densely populated areas, that they contract this virus. So it's very important. I'll be talking about it with the program topic, which is rebuilding Oxnard's economy. It's very important, ladies and gentlemen, that we stress just a couple things. Number one, that we have to wear a mask, right? So we're wearing a mask when we leave our home, when we're in public places, when we go shopping, if we're coming into close contact with people, we're wearing the mask. It's very important, ladies and gentlemen, that we wear the mask because it helps spread the transmission. And I got to remember to talk about sports. So somebody send me a quick message and say, don't forget to talk about youth sports. Secondly, that we're washing our hands frequently, right, up to 20 seconds. And the third thing is that we're abiding by social distancing. So it's very important if we want to keep workers healthy and we want to keep workers safe, that we're just doing these three things. Once again, the mask, washing our hands, and abiding by social distancing. Let me talk about youth sports and athletics. So I've had calls from the heads of many organizations that are involved in soccer and baseball and many other youth team sports. And they've asked me, Mayor Flynn, is it true that that youth sports now are allowed in the city of Oxnard. Youth sports are not allowed in the state of California. They're not allowed right now in the county of Ventura, obviously being part of the state of California. And the problem is that the recreation department, which is responsible for making sure to going to all these parks to make sure that youth sports does not take place, and I'll get into it in a second about why is it youth sports not allowed, that they have found when they've interacted with the individuals there that these aren't youth leagues from Little League Baseball and et cetera right here in the city of Oxnard. These are travel teams that are coming in some instances from outside the city. They're seeing a big wide open park and they're taking advantage of that. So they've had to shut down those games. Ladies and gentlemen, here's what the challenge is. And I've said it last week and I've said it every week. The more people a person is exposed to and the closer a person comes to those people, the more likely it is that they can spread the virus or that they can contract the virus. So youth sports, especially contact sports, just think about it for a second. Think about football. Think about the proximity of players on a football field. They're very close to each other. It's a contact sport. Baseball is a little bit better, right, than say football or maybe basketball, but still there's a lot of contact. And then there's the problem with the spectators. You know that it's Major League Baseball that the players and the owners are trying to get an agreement. We hope that they do. But if they return to a shortened season, maybe playing half the games, they're going to be playing in stadiums where there are no spectators allowed. And that's another real challenge with youth sports, is that mom and dad and uncles and aunts and family members want to go and see their kids play. And it's very difficult for them too to abide by social distancing when maybe the benches, the grandstands are very confining. In some of these instances where the travel teams, the recreation staff has had to go out and shut them down, they had parents do what parents do. I did the same thing. They're setting up tents, they're setting up tables, and people didn't have masks. They're not practicing social distancing. So unfortunately, youth sports are still not allowed. It doesn't matter what the sport is, except there are two exceptions. One is tennis and one is golf. So just think about it for a second. Why would tennis and why would golf be allowed, but these other sports not? Tennis and golf are not contact sports. That's why they're allowed. That's why the golf course is open. They still have to abide by social distancing. They're supposed to be wearing their mask also. And the same thing with tennis. I don't know the specifics about whether they have to wear a mask playing tennis, but the tennis courts that Oxnard has have reopened, as well as the golf course. So those are the only two sports that are allowed. So stay tuned. I wanted to make sure I got this information out properly. And if you're going to neighboring communities or you're driving around and you see that they're allowing, or that you see youth sports taking place, they're not supposed to be taking place. And so it's up to those cities to enforce those policies, exactly what we're doing here in the city of Oxnard. So let me, ladies and gentlemen, transition to the very last topic. And I've spoken about this before, and I think it's extremely important that we begin thinking more, not just about the present, but about Oxnard's future. So let's just talk about it. So I believe, as mayor of this city, that we have some urgent challenges in addition to COVID-19 and some of the issues that have transpired over the last couple of weeks. And that has a lot to do with rebuilding Oxnard's economy, reinvesting in the people of this city, as well as revitalizing the neighborhoods of the city of Oxnard. You know, I joined my neighborhood council right here in the Wilson neighborhood. I joined that neighborhood because I saw things going on in the neighborhood that were not consistent with what should be happening here. And I got involved in my neighborhood council. We had a really bad graffiti problem. We had a whole host of issues, cars getting broken into, and that neighborhood, our neighborhood council, the Wilson neighborhood, and our neighborhood watch really made a difference. And that's, in essence, how I got involved in city politics. So it's rebuilding the city of Oxnard, reinvesting in people, and finally revitalizing neighborhoods. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that whether it's north and south, and traditionally, I grew up here in the city of Oxnard. If you were south of Woolley Road, that was South Oxnard. If you were north of Woolley Road, that was North Oxnard. And now, of course, there's also a divide between the eastern part of Ventura Road and the western part of Ventura Road. There are some neighborhoods, ladies and gentlemen, in this city that are immaculate. And there are other neighborhoods that are less so. And there's a problem with overcrowding and too many automobiles, and the neighborhoods are run down, and there's a lack of investment in that neighborhood. Well, all three of these areas I think are really, really important. But in the context of COVID-19 and what we've seen with COVID-19, it's important that we start thinking about how are we going to rebuild Oxnard's economy. And let's just talk about it here very quickly in the context of Ventura County. So this local economy here in Ventura County has been in a decline for the last 5 years. So in 2019, prior to COVID-19, Ventura County had experienced its fifth straight year of economic weakness, reporting zero economic growth. The gross domestic product forecast for 2020, this current year, and 2021, this is before the pandemic, were 0.1 to 0.2% of economic growth. That is not a positive forecast. So during this very same time period, 2020, 2021, during this time that we're 2019 to 2020, California's economy grew by 3.5%. So here in Ventura County, we face some special problems. And one of those problems is that this is one of the most expensive places in the United States to live. If I'm not mistaken, it's the seventh most expensive place to live in the United States of America. And in order to live in Ventura County and be able to have a balance between workers and the amount of money that workers get paid and to afford these homes, we got to have a balance. And so there's a connectivity between transportation and housing. There's connectivity and should be more connectivity between economic growth and what types of jobs that we attract to Ventura County and right here to Oxnard so that people can afford to live here. Because there is this phenomena that's been taking place. It's not exclusive to Ventura County. It's been happening for some time in the state of California, where especially in coastal areas, it's too expensive to live here. And so people are doing one of two things. They're either moving inland. So as an example, Bakersfield, California, maybe the homes there in Bakersfield are 40% or even 50% less than they are right here in Ventura County. And let's just say somebody's a farm laborer as an example, and they're getting paid the same amount, or there could be a whole host of jobs. They can go to Bakersfield, make the same amount of money, but they have half the house payment. We have to begin to address this right here in our community, and it's a difficult challenge. I don't believe it's an insurmountable challenge, but when it comes to economic growth, we have to see the writing on the wall. The last 5 years, Ventura County has been stagnant. So we got to figure out, how are we going to be able to sustain our lifestyle right here in Ventura County? How are our children going to be able to afford to live here? Many of you, including myself, have our children living with us. Housing is too expensive. The rental market is too expensive for our kids to go out and either buy their own home or to rent a home. So we got to figure out what it is that we're going to do to address some of these issues. So in addition to this population growth and the cost of housing, so we have many other things here that we're seeing job losses. And so I don't want to go over all the statistics of those job losses, but I want to talk and focus right now on what it is that we can do to really focus on rebuilding this economy. The very first thing is what I've consistently been saying. We have to get workers back to work. We have to continue reopening businesses, but we need to do so safely, and we need to do so that protects the health of the workers. If a worker gets sick, if they get COVID-19, or God forbid, when the flu season starts, they get COVID-19 and or another strain of the flu, that is not going to be a productive situation for getting people back to work and getting them back to work in those businesses. So the compromise here that we have to make and that we all have to accept is that if we don't want closures that, by the way, are taking place right now in the great state of Texas and the great state of Florida, they've had such a spike in COVID-19 cases that the governors of those two respective states are beginning to now shut things down. We don't want that happening right here in California, and we certainly don't want it in Ventura County and in Oxnard. So social distancing, washing our hands, wearing the gloves, the mask, that is a start. We got to keep people safe, and we got to keep people healthy. So let's talk about this a little bit. I've spent some time as mayor, particularly focused, where I've spent a lot of time particularly focused on trying to attract new employers to the city of Oxnard. And it's a very healthy debate talking about how does any city, how does a mayor, or how does a city council, how does the business community, how do they attract companies to come to the city? So one of the first things I did as mayor is I was able to convince the city manager and the city council to apply for Amazon's second headquarters. You know, Amazon's headquartered in Seattle. They're looking to have a second headquarters because of their expansion. I mean, from this COVID-19 pandemic, for all I know, they're looking for a third headquarters. So there's a large amount of land just off the 101 freeway off of Del Norte, and it's called Sakioka Farms. It's 430 acres, and it is the last area on the Oxnard Plain that is zoned for industrial and commercial development. This goes back decades that this has been in the plan, in the general plan, which is our blueprint for growth in the future, to develop this land. So I was able to get then Greg Nyhoff, the city manager, to focus on, you know, Greg, wouldn't it be amazing the effect that it would have on the Oxnard economy and the Ventura County economy if we were able to get Amazon to locate on those 430 acres? So I also said to him, look, the hurdles are going to be really high. One of the requirements was that Amazon had is that the location that they pick would have to be 45 minutes from an international airport. We're not 45 minutes from LAX. We're not 45 minutes from Burbank Airport. So that was one of the many criteria that they had. So there were other criteria: have affordable housing, have extremely high test scores with schools. And I'm certainly going to be taking on that issue too as a former high school teacher when it comes to the understanding economic growth. But I convinced him to apply for the Amazon headquarters and then economic development director. And he also said this: look, Greg, it's probably highly unlikely that they're going to select our site just because we don't meet all the criteria. But the method behind the madness is this will showcase the site for other companies to come to Sakioka Farms. And in fact, we've had several companies, including an Amazon distribution center. This was several months, or actually a year and a half ago, that have spoken and have approached the city to relocate here. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't think of anything better than having a high-tech company, a 21st century job company that has a bottom ceiling of maybe $15 an hour or maybe $20 an hour for right here, for our population, for our people right now, $15 to $20 an hour starting, and they are part of a stock sharing program. They have really excellent benefits. They have a future of growth with the company. I mean, wouldn't that be something spectacular? The good news I have to report is out of that Amazon headquarters application, the city of Oxnard is actively speaking now to many companies or several companies that want to locate to the Sakioka Farm site. Stay tuned. We don't have anything substantive right now to announce, but that's been a focus of mine. How do we attract those jobs to Oxnard? So that's number one, and we need higher paying jobs, which is important. The second thing is this. In a presentation I saw recently that was given by the Ventura County Economic Development Collaborative, its executive director, Bruce Stensley, had spoken about, and not only him, and another presentation on sales tax revenue for cities and economic growth, that the retail revolution that had already started before the COVID-19 crisis has only accelerated as a result of COVID-19. And what does that mean? Unfortunately, a lot of brick and mortar retail stores are going to be going out of business because more and more people are resorting to online shopping. So we got to start thinking in a futuristic way about if we're going to rebuild this economy, we want to make sure that we get it right. And a quick story to illustrate this the best is in 1925, there was an earthquake in Santa Barbara, California. It destroyed a lot of the city. And the founding fathers there, or the leaders of Santa Barbara at the time, they had a vision. And their vision was, wait a minute here, we have an opportunity to rebuild this city. And we want to make sure we get it right. And they came up then with the idea that they were going to adopt a Spanish Moorish architectural style that would be then the blueprint for this new rebuilding in Santa Barbara, California. And today, Santa Barbara is not only in California, but worldwide a tourist destination. I mean, you've been to the courthouse, you've seen the buildings in Santa Barbara. It is a beautiful place. Well, we got to make sure that when we rebuild this economy that we get it right. So if a lot of retail stores are going out of business, and many of those retail stores are lower paying jobs, they're more suitable for students, maybe kids of ours that are actually living at home and working at home, but they're not jobs, any job is a good thing, but they're not really jobs that you can actually count necessarily on a career, right? Working necessarily in a restaurant or working in a retail place. So we've got to start thinking about what types of companies do we want to come to this city? How are we going to entice them to come here? What is it that we're going to do to get them to come here? And these are just some thoughts. So in the last year, the city manager, Alex Nguyen, and I teamed up together, and this was his particular brainchild, and that was, you know what we need to do? We really need to focus on identifying what the needs, the existing needs are of the companies right here in our city. We've got some great companies here in Oxnard. Haas Automation, I've talked about them in previous broadcasts. We have Aerodynamics Company. We have so many, Northrop Grumman. We have so many companies here that we want to try to find what is it that they need when it comes to a workforce. And so what was done is these top 10 companies were surveyed. What are the needs that you have that you're having problems getting, when it comes to qualified workers? So they filled out these surveys, brought them all together at Oxnard College, and we had the Oxnard College president, who is an amazing man, amazing leadership, that we had the Oxnard College president and these companies all come together with myself, with the city manager, and with leaders in the community, the Chamber of Commerce, etc. And these leaders then told Oxnard College and the city, these are the skill sets that we need in workers that we're not getting. And ladies and gentlemen, one of the number one things that they all had in common is that too many of the applicants that they're getting did not have sufficient soft skills. And what do I mean by soft skills? Reading, writing, collaboration, being able to collaborate with people, being able to give a presentation. These were sorely lacking, even in some instances with college graduates. They just didn't have this kind of training. So the thought process is that with Oxnard College and with other training, when we replace, and as this retail revolution continues, if we're really set on rebuilding Oxnard and we're thinking, looking down the road, kind of like the way Santa Barbara did after the earthquake in 1925, and we're only 5 years away from that 100th anniversary of that earthquake, that we're thinking about what types of job training programs do we need now to prepare for this revolution that's taking place in retail and in business, that we can train workers, especially younger people. What training do these younger people need to be able to perform in the very existing businesses that we have already in our city? We want to see the businesses in our city thrive. We want to see them prosper. We want to see them grow. But at the very core of this, ladies and gentlemen, the rebuilding of Oxnard is we have to be centered on the realities of the existing marketplace, the retail revolution that's only been accelerated because of COVID-19, and think about the youth of this community and training them so that they can assume these futuristic jobs. There's one statistic that says by 2040, that's in 20 years, that up to 40 to 50% of all the existing jobs are going to be eliminated. So we need to think down the road about Oxnard, how we're going to rebuild Oxnard, how we're going to reinvest in people. And part of this, again, has to do with education. I'll take that on next week, talk a little bit about education and some of the ideas. And finally, that prosperity is going to help us revitalize the neighborhoods of our city. The disparities that exist between North Oxnard and South Oxnard, the disparities that exist between the eastern part of Oxnard and western part of Oxnard, ladies and gentlemen, that gap of those disparities, that gap will be narrowed by an ever more prosperous city. So I'd just like to end on that note. I am going to try right now, and I'm looking at the time. I've gone on too long. I'm not going to take any questions. I'm sorry. I'll have to take those questions. I got carried away here on my presentation. So next week, I'll address your questions. Please send them to me, and you can email me at tim.flynn@oxnard.org. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Anyway, sorry about that. Social distancing. And you can email me at tim.flynn@oxnard.org, or you can text me at 805-340-1922. I want to wish you a great weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to be hopeful. We can never lose hope. We have to have hope that we're going to get through this crisis. I believe we will get through this crisis. We're going to hope and pray that we get a vaccine very soon. But in the meantime, be safe, use common sense, be healthy, and God bless America. Thank you very much, and we'll resume another Facebook Live broadcast next Friday at 6 p.m. Please share this video with your friends. Thank you very much. I think somebody probably just texted me and said I went on too long, so thank you.